Okay, good morning. How is everybody? Good. Is everybody properly caffeinated? Yes? All right, just by a round of applause, how good a time are you having so far? Pretty good. That's pretty good considering half of you are hungover. So congratulations. I actually said to Julie, you know, the morning of the second day, that's officially what speakers call the hangover slot. So I know that I have to inspire you, but in a very quiet way this morning. So I have a very simple goal today, and that's to help you create more space for change and innovation at your company, as well as the clients that you serve. And I want to help you do it in really simple ways. Does that sound like a good goal today? Yeah? Okay. So what's interesting is change and innovation, I know, to the people in this room, they're not new topics, right? For many people, I'm sure they're very old topics. You've heard about them for too long. My question isn't, are they important? My question is, why aren't we able to do it? I've had a company called FutureThink for 20 years. Very successful. We're out of New York City. Who here's from New York? All right. And what's interesting is we teach leaders change, right? Possible, probable, preferable scenarios for change so they can act on it. And it's been very fun. My trainers are all over the world. They love to do what they do. Teach new skills, get people comfortable with change, which is not easy. But what was shocking to me was about 5 years ago, my trainers were coming back from engagements, and they were really disengaged. They were really upset. They were just kind of ticked off. They were all complaining about the same thing, increasingly. And it was this. The very people that were bringing us in to teach change, right, to their teams and their organizations, were the very people that were holding us back from doing it when we got there. Does that sound familiar sometimes when you go into engagements? Right? Please come in, teach change. Or please come in, help us draw a colorful picture of the future, but really color within very specific lines, which to me is ridiculous because you know the picture you're going to get. In fact, it's not ridiculous, it's dangerous. So I wanted to find out why this was. Why are people so resistant to change? You know, is it technology? Is it globality? Is it scale? Is it compliance and regulation? So I started asking the groups that I was speaking to one simple question. Right? Groups like yours. What do you spend your day doing? Think about that. What do you spend your day doing? And what happened was I wasn't shocked by the uniqueness of the answers. I was shocked by the absolute conformity of them. So regardless of the company, the culture, the industry, the function or role of the people I was speaking to, they all answered the question the exact same way. What do you spend your day doing? And everyone answered meetings and emails. See, I think that people get up in the morning to do meaningful work. Right? You all do. You get up, you want to do things that matter. I don't have a single friend that wakes up in the morning, looks at their inbox for their email and is like, oh my God, I am so popular. Look at this. This is amazing, right? My husband has never looked at me with a full calendar and been like, check it out. I don't even know how I'm going to get it all done. I thought I was going to be bored today, right? That doesn't happen. And if it does, you need therapy. This is a problem, right? So what that made me realize is all the things that we put in place, right? And it's unintentional. These are unintentional things. I do them too. One of my colleagues is here and he can vouch that I'm a hypocrite standing on stage. The things that we do to help us better innovate, the things we put in place, meetings, reports, policies, emails, procedures, those are the very things that often put a chokehold on them. They're very important, but they can't be the only thing that you do, and often they become an excuse not to do anything at all. You've seen it at your clients, and you've seen it with a Navigant. I know it. So what do? I think that we have to stop thinking always as value as additive. Value can also be a subtractive process, right? It can be taking things away. I think we have to be able to get rid of things first as part of our process to create the space for change and innovation and thinking to happen. So here's what we're going to do. I want to inspire you. That's part of my job. Things are happening out there within the industries and the clients that you serve, and businesses like yours. I work with a lot of consulting companies, a lot of service organizations. There's things happening that are really cool, that you're really going to want to do. Meaningful work, right? Not meetings and emails. So I want to inspire. The second thing I want to do, and this is my job, is I want to make you uncomfortable. Change only happens when I challenge your assumptions, and that's my job today. So if you feel uncomfortable with something that I talk about, and I hope you do, I want you to ask yourself why. Why are you uncomfortable? It's because I'm challenging your assumptions around how you think things have to be. And then you should understand, what do you think could be different? So let's start talking about that. Let's start talking about things being different. Now, I'm well aware that yesterday you had a conversation with another futurist, so you're well aware of what futurists do, right? We talk about possible, probable, and preferable scenarios for change. But when we start getting people comfortable with change, we have to open up their thinking around what is change, how does it happen? How many people here, by show of hands, think that they are good at detecting change? Okay, Julie's here and this is being filmed, so how many people are good? I'm just saying, Julie, a lot of people raised their hand, a lot did. So, okay, usually I get about 10% of the room, to be honest, because they're not sure. I get a lot of this, not quite sure if I should raise my hand. So we're going to play a game that a lot of my guys teach. Where are my oil and energy guys? Teams. Okay, great. Yeah, I knew it was a big practice. So we have some people that started the program down at University of Houston Clear Lake for foresight, because obviously a lot of oil and energy companies, pharma companies, regulated businesses look for longer time horizons because they have more at stake. And we want to help those companies keep their antenna up. So let's see how good you are at keeping your antenna up. And we're going to play a game that we play at University of Houston Clear Lake called In the News. And this is how the game goes. I'm going to give you some headlines from the future that may or may not be true. If you think they're true, when I read the headline and tell you the story, you're going to stand up out of your seats and give me jazz hands like this. Okay. If you think that the story is false, I want you to stay seated, cross your arms, and look really angry. Okay? Can you do it? Can you do it? Yes. Okay. Do me a favor and push your chairs back a little bit to get ready. If you didn't work out this morning, you're welcome, right? This is going to burn like 10 calories. All right, here's what we'll do. I'm going to read this first story. Give me a second to explain it. And then I'll let you know if it's time to stand up or look angry. Here we go. First story. So Fitbit, fitness tracker, and Netflix, they are developing entertainment experiences that are driven by your behavior. Okay, this is a pilot that's being done in London right now. They have selected 50 people. And it goes like this. These fitness trackers, usually for locomotor activity, right, or sleep activity, are now being outfitted in something we know can do unstructured data and can capture your thoughts and your feelings. So these 50 people with these trackers, now when they're ready to watch a movie, they get in front of their entertainment system, pop on Netflix, and Netflix will read their tracker and recommend movies based on how they're feeling at the moment. If you think this is true, entertainment based on feeling from Netflix, give me the jazz hands right now. Come on. It's not this, it's this, right? It's this. Stand up. No, keep standing because you look stupid, and I like it. Okay? Okay, but no, stay standing, please. Angry people who are seated, come on, these guys standing up, these are my visionaries, people, right? These are my thought leaders. I love it. And these people are wrong, so sit down. Come on, that's not happening, really, guys. More coffee, more coffee. Okay, it's false. It's totally false. But what I like about it, is, why did you stand up? Why? Right, it's possible, right? And these things are already starting to happen. But we don't think about it. We see the stuff starting to happen, and frankly, you dismiss it. A lot of times what happens is they're silly things, they're marketing gimmicks, and that's when a futurist goes, right? You don't want to dismiss the little, small, that could become big. And I'm going to give you an example, actually, from Douwe Egberts, the Dutch coffee brand, right? 300 years old. If a coffee company can look at behavior in terms of helping build their business, so can some of your bigger regulated industries. And let me tell you why. They said, how can we get people to not want to just buy our coffee when we offer it to them, but actually, we know when they're tired, so we can serve it up at the moment when they need it the most. So they did an experiment using behavioral data in OR Tambo, right, in the Johannesburg airport, and it went a little something like this, if we can roll the tape.
May be attentive to the passengers, Belgian Transport Express Flight 7617, Constable 72. Get ready to see the boarding file, please be in the 812A.
And you get the idea, right? I mean, wouldn't that have been great? You roll out of bed and someone's just there for you with a cup of coffee. That would be weird, actually, but it would be neat if somebody could predict it. So why do I talk to you about this? Behavior-driven technology, even wearables, because we're not thinking about them in the right way. We typically think about these things in terms of B2C. It's the nurse practitioner or the doctor who's helping the patient. We know those scenarios. But where it could really, really affect your business and your client's business is in B2B, and that's where a lot of wearables are being retrenched. So when you think about it, and again, this is to oil and energy and other places that have a lot of compliance. What if those people on the rigs actually can show, right? With wearables and doing video, yes, we did indeed do these safety checks, and we did do them accurately, beyond paper, right? Or what if it really helps with drug development, where we have dispersed teams around the world actually live, showing others how we can work and build new compounds, right? And get healing solutions to market more quickly, right? There's big promise for wearables. There's also, with every good, there's evil. And this is where I'm going with this. What's interesting about giving people wearables is the legalities around who owns that data, right? My actions, because what we say we do and what we do are often two different things. And all of a sudden, when we have wearables and we're catching things at work, yes, that makes me more productive. I can prove things from a compliance perspective. I can share it with others and we can get training. And won't I also be fired? Right? What if I don't do something right? Think about that as an employee. So if you work if you do benefits consulting, like if you're Hewitt or you do benefits consulting here, what does that mean? And how do you counsel your clients around that? If you're going to implement these technologies, what does that mean from a cultural standpoint so they don't lose people and actually retain them? So here's what I want you to think about here. Technology and behavior. Right? Change is always a little different than what you think. How will behavior-driven tech change the expectations of clients or customers? Right? If I give you my data, you better deliver something back for me. But how does it also explain the changes of how people will feel if they're the employees? Okay. I'm feeling bad for those of you that stood up, so I thought we'd try another one. Is that okay? Let's try another one. Now, this is not what you think, but there is something beyond 3D printing. It's called 4D printing. And it's going to change the world. The Army and Harvard are exploring ways together through grants to create self-assembling objects, right? Smart objects, to create things like bridges that literally can spring into shape. 4D printing to make smart objects that can spring into shape, even bridges. If you think it's true, stand up now. Give me those hands. Okay, see, I know you're type A and you're thinking she can't do 2 falses in a row. I'm not that dumb. Let's see, you guys. It is, oops, I went backwards. It is, oh, it's true. Oh my gosh. Well done. Well done. It is absolutely true. Now, for everybody here that knows this, forgive me, but here's the definition of 4D. 4D printing are smart objects, right? And they've either been injected with some kind of nanomaterial or some other type of material that can transform over time. And in some cases, they can self-assemble together. So think about origami-type robots that come together, that can be digested, that can go in and do something clinical, and once they finish that task, can be flushed out of the body. This is how something works like this. In fact, we're going to roll the tape, and I'll talk a little bit while it happens. We can use all different kinds of materials. This is a simple polymer. And this is, when it comes in contact with whatever is programmed to do, it can be wind, it can be heat. In this instance, it's water. And this object, and this is sped up at 50 times if you can see it, is folding itself once it comes into contact with said agent, again water, into a cube. Now imagine what the implications for this are with materials in manufacturing, right? Objects that come and self-assemble into whatever you tell them to do, what their job is to be done. Now what's interesting about this is a few things. When you think of when you think of objects, we think of 3D. This is a building. It was manufactured outside of China with an extremely large printer, right? All of it was made in one day and assembled in less than a week. This is a 3D printed apartment building. That's pretty cool, right? Think about that for a minute, because what's the implication? What if then you had smart materials in that building that could expand and contract to withstand earthquakes, to not have pipes that clog? What if you're a shoe manufacturer? Think about this implications. And shoe manufacturers, it's interesting. Think how many SKUs they produce a year. They make a lot of money. How many SKUs? What if you only had to produce one? Because the smart materials in this shoe, they know to react that when you go now onto grass, it's going to spring cleats. And then when you go onto a hard surface, again, maybe that's concrete or it knows how to react to a wax floor, it's going to spring reinforcements around its ankle for you if you're playing basketball. Right? Pretty cool. Or what if you're like this company outside of, I think this was in Leeds, but this is smart concrete that actually on roads can self-heal. I mean, think about that. We spend about, what was it, even just outside of London, I think it's €500 million a year in terms of being able to fix infrastructure. This will heal itself. Or what about this? Pipes that simply don't clog, right? They pump the water out as needed, or they expand and contract based on heat or based on freezing conditions. This is adaptive infrastructure. And what's really cool about this is the future of cities and manufacturing is non-permanent. It is completely flexible, and it is reactive. So if you are in real estate, and I speak to a lot of real estate people, that's cool. I mean, think about, I'm from Detroit originally. That's a war zone. There are buildings there that no one can afford to take down, and in the future, they don't have to afford it because they can be taken down easily, and spaces can be reused, right? And they can become new things. We don't have to worry about all the money that we spend on rebuilding infrastructure because it'll heal itself. This is really cool. Oh my gosh, so many people have moved into my town. I live in Westchester. How are we going to actually adapt the school for all the kids that are coming in? No problem. So where does this go? This is what I want you to think about. How in the future are we going to build products that could do many things? Think about that. If you stretch your clients' minds this way, it can save them money, it can save them costs, right? It can set them apart. But what does this also mean in terms of manufacturing? Right? I'm from Detroit. My father worked at GM. Manufacturing could go away. My car could show up in my driveway like a flat pallet and assemble itself. That's a stretch, but is it? So think about that for the future. All right, we're going to do one last headline, and then I want to talk about change and what holds us back from this stuff. So this is your last chance, if you've gotten two wrong, to redeem yourself in front of your friends. This is it. Here we go. BMW. They have partnered with USC, which is the University of Southern California, and they have created a car with over 300 sensors. The goal of this car is to make the driver healthier. That's its goal, right? Not just point A to point B, but to be healthier. If you think it's true, last chance. Give me jazz hands. Stand up. Yeah, see, this is the moment where people are kind of cautious, like, I don't know. All right, about a third of the room. Oh, you guys are weird. Of course it's true. Nice job. Nice job. This is great. This is Nigel. It's a Mini. And it has over 300 sensors. I'll tell you some of the basic things that Nigel can do. So basic diagnostics. Basically, when you get into the car will tell you how much weight you have lost or gained since the last time that you drove it. Right? Isn't that great? Yeah. It's a terrible car. It's a terrible, it comes with a therapist, which is nice. Also, when you put your hand on the steering wheel, there's basic diagnostics. Does your heart rate go up more when you pull into your parking space at work or your driveway at home? The venting system is hooked up so we know the amount of pollutants that are coming in, and the GPS can reroute you to a healthier route. And it goes on and on. And what I love about this example is, this is talking about the future is not who you are. The future is who you're becoming. And I'm going to come back to that. The future is not who you are, the future is who you're becoming. Because this car is telling you that in the future, who it might partner with is different, and what it might do is different. So think about this. So I spend a lot of time in Basel, and you can guess it's one of 2 pharmaceutical companies. And I spend a lot of time with executives there. And the brainstorms always go like this, right? Their future of sessions are always, it's either about the pill and to get more adherence, or it's beyond the pill, because the pill is the main part of the business still. So how can we get people to do a better job of taking our medications, adherence? Well, let's see. Where do they spend a lot of their time? Well, in transit. Well, they spend a lot of time in their car. What if we could get pharmaceuticals into the car? That'll never, until it does, right? And there's healing agents that can come through the vents. They can be in the steering wheel. They can be done in terms of therapies. We laugh because in the future, let's say 5 years from now, there's your BMW brought to you by Pfizer, right? Think about that. So what do you have to think about in the future? You have to think about things become different things. This is a silly thing called a futures wheel. It talks about implications of change. It is a terrible slide because it had to fit into PowerPoint. But the idea is, how do you tell signals of change, and how do you know what they mean? Right? In the future, you don't care who's driving the car because you're not driving it. Right? You don't care about drunk driving because there won't be any. You don't care about grandpa driving because he's not driving it. He's not too old to drive anymore. We have self-healing roads. We have self-healing cars. A mechanic might go away. Why do you need them? Do you need insurance? We're not going to get into accidents. The algorithms can help with that. And it goes on and on and on. And some of these things sound completely preposterous, right? Because they're not happening in the near term, but they could be in the farther term. Think about what that means to totally transforming industries and the implications for your clients. So here's what I want you to think about. What will your firm, not even your clients, forget about that right now, Navigant, what will you be doing in 10 years, right? That is completely different than what you're doing today. The future is who you're becoming. To be honest, I bet everybody here in the room can tell me who you are. Who is Navigant? All of you can tell me. If you can't, you shouldn't be here, to be honest. But the people who are going to succeed and go on to do really great things, either in this company or others, are the ones that know right now who you're becoming, because they're far-looking people. Who are you becoming? So let's talk about change. Let's talk about change. And this is a slide, by the way, that makes you really smart at a cocktail party. This is it. And I'm only going to show a couple ones like this. Really smart at a cocktail party. Here's how change happens. And the takeaway from this is change is never what you think. It never starts and ends the same way. So change is how aware you are of something and how many references or Google hits it gets over time. So the more aware, the more Google hits, and it kind of creates momentum, right? So when a trend starts, when change starts, it's emerging. You don't know what it is. You don't even know what to call it. No one's invested in it yet. It's the crazy inventor in the garage. It's the annoying guy in the conference room that won't shut up with his ideas. Can we just get back to the reports? And then it's framed. It moves up to being framed. We have something to call it now. It's GMO. It's social media. There's a term. There's a box we can put it in. People are investing. You hear people talking about it at cocktail parties. You act like you know what it is, right? And then it moves up. It's mainstream. There are task forces, right? We have people assigned to it now. We have hiring for it. Budgets. public companies, and then it's resolved. Right? This is the moment where we have laws in place, we have lobbyists, people are going to jail at this point. That's what's happening. People go to jail here. They're working the system. And here's how you're thinking about it right now. Let me give you a personal example so you know. So down here on the bottom of this slide, it might be hard to read. Back in 2004, when you got your Harvard Alumni magazine, you saw that there was something in there about this face mash thing that was becoming Facebook. By the end of the year, 1 million people were on it. And someone went into their boss and said, hey, there's this dating social thing going on. It's really catching fire. We should look into this. And the boss said, that's fantastic, but let's get back to work. Right? Not now. And then it moves up the scale. Right now it's in TechCrunch. It's with the avant-garde bloggers. There's a mainstream company called MySpace. How many people check their MySpace account today? Right? There's the avant-garde Facebook, and we go on and on and on. And then we move up the scale. Now it's the front of a magazine. Oh my gosh, I hope we're addressing something with this, we say in our companies. This is the moment when I'm talking to millennials that I'll say, this is the moment when your mom or grandmother has friended you on Facebook, right? It's over. It's really over at this point. And then, Supreme Court or High Court, depending on where you're from, this is where we're looking at business rights to use personal data. This is about structured and unstructured data. This is about how much are your memories worth? Who gets them when you die? So why do you care? Right? Everyone's got a chart about change. This is why you care, very simplistically. Down here at the bottom of the chart, this is where you are influencing change. Right? There are things to still be shaped. There are guardrails. Up here, there are handcuffs. You are taking orders. Which one do you want? Right? Do you want to be influencing change, or do you want to be taking orders? Well, it depends. Right? Here's what matters. I want you to think about other organizations that are thinking about who they're becoming. Who they're becoming. So I'm going to give one oil and energy example. And this is really interesting. I love working with the energy guys because I think their time horizons are so big. I also work with pharma, with banks, people that are regulated. And if people that are regulated can do it, the unregulated can too. Large time horizons, incredible investments, large risk. Oil and energy too, a lot of big oil companies, they have more money than God. A lot of money. So what happens? They do ventures that work out or don't work out, right? But the idea is thinking about, boy, our business is going to be completely different soon. Why is this important? Well, I don't know if immediately they're going to go from extracting energy to growing it. I think that's a stretch. But there are people that are thinking about this. And why is that important? Because it affects who you hire, and whoever gets the best talent, consulting companies, wins. And so I'm sitting in Basel, and this was over a year ago now, and the head of HR from one of the largest divisions, pharma, walks in, and they had just lost their first candidate to an oil company. I don't think anybody in pharma would have thought of that 15, 20 years ago. They lost a candidate to an oil company. Huh, really? A biologist to an oil company, that's interesting. So the people that your companies, your clients are going to be fighting with either to buy, to acquire, or get talent from are going to be completely different. And let me give you another one. Here we go with cars, right? We're not going to be just cars, they're going to be mobility services. It might not be the car, it might be the service in the car, they might not make cars at all. Or in the future, I love this one. Is anyone here, do you consult in publishing? You guys do that at all? Not really? So I like the story that Macmillan did, although a lot of the publishing companies are just struggling, right? They're content companies, they're entertainment companies, what are they? Hug your friends that are in publishing right now. Go give them a big hug. And what's interesting about it is there was a guy at Macmillan, they hired a guy, a venture capitalist, gave him $100 million and said, you can only acquire companies that will put us out of business. That's really interesting. And so they started actually investing in these companies like, forget about ebooks. They were investing in things like sensory books. Has anyone here read a sensory book? Anybody? This is where it's awkward now. You have some kind of vest or almost VR wear where you actually experience the book live. You feel the characters. So, for example, if you're reading a book and the character travels to somewhere warm, you suddenly, you're feeling kind of hot. Or they break up with their boyfriend and you're kind of sad about it. And the best thing I loved is there was a blogger in New York that wrote about they didn't want anybody reading a sensory book on the subway if it was 50 Shades of Grey. They were really concerned about it. So what do these companies do? What are they doing? They're doing something that I think you have to think about too for you and your clients, proactive obsolescence, right? They're killing the current business model to come up with something new. In the future, if you want to survive or you want to grow, you have to be the go-to for these companies that are struggling with who are we becoming? And what services do you offer to them? How do they know that they should come to you versus the other guys that are out there? Who are you becoming? Why would I trust you to determine that? How do you think like that? Well, let me tell you what holds people back from who they're becoming, especially at your clients, even if you try and convince them to become someone new. I think there's two twin evils that always take place, and it's complexity and it's complacency. We all deal with complexity every day, right? Meetings and emails. But the worst is the result of it, and that's complacency, right? I'm not going to bang my head against the wall anymore. Everything's just fine. Let's just go with the cash cow. Let's stick with what is. I don't want to take the risk. And it was a few years ago, excuse me, when I was writing my book, Kill the Company, that I had the enlightened moment came to me when I had a really bad experience. It was very embarrassing. And we were down in Raleigh, and it was with a very large multinational manufacturing company, their largest division. You would know them if I told you their name. And they said, we want you to come down and talk to us about the future of manufacturing 2050, a big time horizon. Really sexy, fun stuff. I bring my futurists down there. It's their 50 people. I kick off the day. And then I'm going to have the rest of my team do other exercises. So we get down there. They get in the room. Future 2050. Everybody's sitting down having coffee. And I start off, and I'm about 45 minutes into it, maybe even a little less. And I realize they hate me. I mean, no one is paying attention. They could care less. All the nonverbals are like this. I'm thinking, I'm literally going down in flames. In front of my whole team, too, which is really fun. And so I called the audible, and I said, let's take a break. All right, let's just take a beat. I wanted to go in the bathroom, stay in the fetal position as long as possible, not come out, really just awful. And, I had to come out, and I huddled with my team, like, what are we going to do? And I talked to one of the more senior guys there, and I said, so what do you think? What's going on? And he looked at me like I had three heads. Like, what do you mean? I said, well, no, I don't think anyone's buying it. Nobody cares. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. It's not that we don't want to change. We no longer really believe we can affect it. I thought, oh my gosh, So this is we were just going through the motions, right? We were checking a box. With strategic planning's coming up, see if this consultant can come up with something new, this kind of thing, Future of wacky stuff that we can put in there but then not do. And I thought, oh my God, what do we do? So I came back in and said, we're going to try something different. And I reorganized the room into functions and roles. So it was legal and procurement and then rocketry, whatever it was, right? Logical groups. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I want each of your groups to think about who your number one competitor is. Because legal could be someone internal or it can be someone they aspire to be. GEs, who knows? GEs are lawyers. And they all talked for a minute and they figured out in 5 minutes who their number one competitor was. Great. And I said, keep that hat on and I want you to pretend you're that competitor. Now, I want you to kill your company. I want you to put yourself out of business. And you would have thought like we were at a concert, like lighters going off, people suddenly are really engaged, it's really fun. And what I realized about this was we rarely give people the chance out of in a politically correct context to say what is really sucking wind at our company, right? We don't mandate it. Everything's about additive, not subtractive. So they were coming up with things like, why do we have these redundancies, obviously, in roles across different units? Why don't we actually jettison this product? We never kill things, we just let them go on forever. What if we change the pricing structure? How could we turn this on our competitor? And this went on and on and on. This was meant to be an hour talk. This turned into an all-day exercise. And what was really cathartic about it was giving them an out-of-company experience and realizing at the start of strategic planning, and you know how strategic planning starts, right? This is how strategic planning typically goes. Somewhere around, end of spring, beginning of summer, somebody in charge of strategic planning for their unit finds last year's PowerPoint deck, right? They open it up, they change the date to this year, and they save it. And strategic planning has begun, right? It's begun. And then we do the SWOT analysis, strengths. There's lots of strengths, always lots of strengths. Weaknesses, are they really weaknesses or are they opportunities, right? And we go on and on and on. And I'm being a bit of a smartass, but you know what I'm talking. You're laughing because it's true. And so we rarely take the time to say and give people a mandate, how would you actually get rid of? So I want you to think about this, right? Within Navigant, how would you kill your part of the company? Right? Do you have the guts to go back with your group and say, we are going to kill our unit, our group, whatever? I've had clients that have done it with their clients. Right? I've had other consulting companies that have worked with their big diamond accounts that have gone in and said, we're going to kill this part of your company together. And they love it. They love it. Think about that. If you need to think about who you're becoming, how would you kill the company? So here's what holds you back from doing it. And I'm curious if this resonates with you or the clients you work with. The first thing that's holding you back is most people are not leading, they're managing. In fact, I would argue that people in this company or at your clients, they're not leading, they're professional skeptics. They're really good at telling you what won't work, but it's very hard for them to embrace what could. The second thing is embracing process over culture. Process is really easy because it's regimented and it's regular and it's measurable. But culture, who you're becoming, is usually about who you're hiring and those soft skills. And the last thing is the addiction to doing over thinking. The addiction to doing over thinking, right? Thinking is a daring act in a lot of companies because we're overwhelmed. Think about it. You walk into somebody's office, and there's Bob, and he's looking out the window. You go, hey, Bob, what are you doing? He just looks at you and goes, oh, I'm just thinking. What's the first thing that pops into your mind? Get back to work, right? Becomes this opposite type of deal. And I laugh, I like to tell this story that I really like neuroscience. And I sit on this advisory board within 3M with a lot of scientists. And I love it, because I always say the geeks are my peeps. I just love it. They're creating tomorrow today. And we were at cocktails one night after this advisory meeting. And I was talking with one of the guys there, one of the neurologists there, and I said, I really think thinking has become so difficult. We don't have the time within a company to do it. Thinking is a daring act. And this guy that was normally really introverted suddenly got really just like animated and in my face. And he said, I completely agree. I completely agree. Thinking is such a daring act, and the brain is the most amazing, amazing organ that we have. It starts working from the very moment that you wake up in the morning, and it doesn't stop until the very second that you set foot into your office. I thought, it's true. So true, right? So if you feel like you're overwhelmed, here's why, right? In the last several years, 15 years, the number of layers, coordinating bodies or groups, approval layers, has increased anywhere between 50 to 350%. Anyone that has strict regulatory, right, or compliance procedures understands this. The bigger thing, which I love, and this is a report that came out from Bain and was in HBR recently. The title of the article is technology helping us or hurting us? The answer is yes. Here's what a lot of people spend their day doing. This is the average employee. 45% of the time is in meetings. 23% doing email. To be honest, I thought this would be reversed. I thought it'd be more email, but this is just during the working hours. 18% doing unproductive work. And part of unproductive work was the time people had to spend going between one meeting to the next. And then the final part, which I thought was interesting, is the 14% was left to getting real work done. Getting real work done. So we hold ourselves back. So who's at fault here, right? Why are we not getting more work done? Well, here's what I want us to think about. Are we really open to change as leaders? And sometimes you don't realize that you hold yourself back from doing it. Now, I've been talking for a while, so I'm going to do a little shake it up before we go into this next section here. And I want you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask everybody to stand up for me. Put your coffee down, stand up. All right, this is a little neurology. What I would like you to do now is I would like you to find a partner that is not at your table. 5 seconds, go for it. A partner not at your table. Say hi to somebody. say hello, introduce yourself. Ideally, it's someone you don't know. Raise your hand if you're a single. Raise your hand if you're a single. Okay, I have a single here, and we have a. Can you come over this way? All right, she's going to go this way. Single. Do we have another single? Okay, great. Someone's coming to you. Any other singles? Okay. Do me a favor. You've paid for this ballroom. I want you to use the space. So spread out a little bit. You can come to the front a little. Really come up, guys, in the front for me, so these guys in the back spread out. Okay? Yeah, guys in the front, come up for me so these guys in the back have room. Thank you. Now give yourselves space. You're going to be arm's length apart. So you might have to move some chairs. Arms length apart facing each other. Good? All right. It's going to get tricky now. Are you guys ready? I need, between the two of you, decide who's going to be an apple and who's going to be an orange. Go ahead. I'll give you 5 seconds. Got it? Okay. Okay. Does anyone need more time? Okay. Now, do me a favor. Apples. Make a fist. Stick it out at your partner. It's a salute, not a punch. Okay? All right? Oranges. Here we go. Put the palm right up against the apple. So everyone's got this going on, right? Everyone got it? Yep. Okay. Now, on the count of 3, just to warm everybody up, I'm going to tell you to push. Okay? On the count of 3, we got some overachievers over here. On the count of 3, apples, I'm going to tell you to push. Apples, are you ready? Apples, 1, 2, 3. Let's warm it up. Push. Good. I got to warm you up. Push harder. Warm it up. Good. Push as hard as you can. Push it, push it, push it. All right. Some of you done this before. Okay, stop, stop. People are hurting each other. Good warm up. Okay. Apples, good job. What did I tell you to do? Nice. Oranges, what were your instructions? Nothing. Nope. I have to say, this was a good group. You've either done it before or you're very smart, right? So smart. So the idea is, what happens is we naturally resist change, right? We get into our reptilian brain, our lizard brain. So we get into our brainstem, which is fight or flight, right? If a reptile, when something comes at it, like a lot of animal instincts, we go to protect ourselves. We fight, we resist. But we want to get up through that limbic area, which is emotions, into our frontal cortex, neocortex. We want to be able to go where our thinking happens, our creative problem solving. And it's very hard to do under stress. Meetings, emails, quarterly reports, earnings, things like this, your clients, etc. So you could have absorbed it, which some of you did. You could have rechanneled the energy. But really, this is a metaphor for how you as leaders react to change and how you react to new ideas. So I want you to think about this. Not all of you do this, but many of you do. You go to your teams and you say, you guys, we need some big ideas. And your team goes, okay. And they come to you with an idea. Hey, boss, I got an idea. Okay. Tell me about it. I'm listening, right? I'm a good boss, really good, active listener. So, all right, great. I'm listening. Good. Tell me about it. Well, this could really change the game. Okay. Do you have a business plan that I could see? No? Okay. It's a little bit more of a game changer. It's going to require some investment. I need 50 years of finance. It just keeps going like this, right? So what else can you do? How can you think about, rather than resisting the change, how can you be better at absorbing it and being more open to it? It's not easy, but I want to give you some tools to start doing that right now for you with your teams and then with your clients. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay, thank your partner. And let's sit down. Well done, partner. Well done. Okay. So are you really open to change? I don't know. How did you do on that? Are you open to change? So here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to give you a little diagnostic. This is easy. Doesn't require a lot of caffeine. Can you do me a favor and you can do this in your head if you don't want to, but if you have a piece of paper, can you number it 1 to 8 for me? It'll just make it easier and you can reference it later. 1 to 8. I'm going to give you 8 statements. And basically what this is, these are yes or no statements of how good are you really at being open to change? And I'll be honest, when I first did this, remember, I have team members in the room. I'm not always open to change. The more stressed I am absolutely not open to change. I'm the boss, right? Right? We are the consultants, we know best. And that's where we get into problems. And I'm sure I've missed really great ideas because of it, shame on me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some statements. I just have a couple rules. The first one is I want you to think of this within the purview of where you operate or the area you lead every day. Right? This isn't about mothership. This is about what you can control. And the second thing is when you read these statements, I want you to think about if the answer isn't yes or no, if it's a maybe, that's a no. Okay? That's a no. Here we go. Statement number 1. People in our organization or your group actively think about how to push boundaries of what's possible. They imagine how to apply critical trends to their business to stay ahead, right? Either to Navigant or the client you work with. Okay. Number 2. Our employees or the people in your group are comfortable asking provocative or even unsettling questions to stretch thinking. Unsettling. Number 3, our people can think on their feet and they can and when faced with unforeseen challenges, they can nimbly change direction. They're agile. Number 4, employees in my group do not easily give up on their beliefs or ideas when they have some kind of adversity or encounter disbelief. They generally see them through, generally. Okay? Not always, but generally. Number 5, our organization or my team is constantly looking forward to the next 5 to 10 years, not the next strat plan, and they seek solutions on how to stay ahead. Constantly, you decide what that means. Number 6, we seek to do things better than what's been done before. Right? Always coming up with new offerings, improving things. We push for this improvement, even if what we already have in the industry is the leader or successful. Right? No status quo, you challenge it. Number 7, we purposefully hire people with diverse backgrounds or thinking styles. We strive to create project teams that have a variety of disciplines. Right? That's your diversity question, your inclusion question. And here's your last one. We often look at what other companies, service companies, industries outside of ours that are adjacent or beyond, completely unrelated to ours. We look at what they're doing, and we use their best practices, apply them to our own work. NASA, Oprah, casinos, right? Baby shoe companies. Do me a favor and add up the number of yeses that you had. This is just for you. Number of yeses on that sheet out of 8. And then let me know, how did you do? Okay, 1 to 2, status quo. Good. 3 to 5, risk-taking. 6 to 8, change maker. Also put in the back of your mind, what do you think your client would have gotten? Now, what do you think the average score is that most people get when I do this, a group like yours? Shout out to me, what do you think? Interesting. Pessimist, 2. My God, it's 3. Much bigger than that. It's about 3, which is interesting. I think this group probably got a little bit higher than that. I've seen service industries usually do a little bit better, but usually it's 3, and that's usually because people, they don't realize that some of the small things they're doing actually are innovative and open to change. You know, if it's not big, if we're not making the iPod, we're not doing anything good. And they don't have time. right? It's not that they don't have the intent, they don't have the time to execute it. Now, what's interesting about this is, when I replace, if I gave you the same thing, same statements, but I replaced we or our with I look ahead. When I encounter disbelief, this is what I do. What do you think the average score is? Yeah, it's 11. It's high. It's high, really high. But what that says to me, and if you want these slides, I'm happy to give them to Renee. It'd be interesting to do this with your team. Interesting to give to your client, too. People like quick diagnostics, right? I mean, there's not a lot of rigor in this. There's more rigorous ones. But just for this little temperature check, what I find really interesting is the gap between the I versus we. Right? So there's intent. I want to do it, but I'm held back by something. What is that? What skill is missing? Is it being able to question? Is it about thinking outside of the box? Is it we're too stuck in the status quo? Right? There's something wrong. There's a gap. And then I also think it's interesting when you do this with your own team, with the our, the one we just did, our, we. The leaders always rank it higher than the people that work for them. And what's really interesting is to look at what yeses you gave versus what yeses they gave. And then this isn't about, then you have to fix it. That's not it. Then it's a really neat tool for you to say to them, okay, so if these are the no's, what do you think we should do? And who would like to help do it to be able to turn these no's into yeses? Because your goal, you as a leader, your goal is to not personally get all 8. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, really, come on, give yourselves a break. But your goal is to have a team that does. So how can you look at that and say, how do I have a team that has all those skills so I can get all those yeses? Right? How do you turn the no's into yeses? So again, if you want those slides, we can get them to you and you can try them with your team. So here's what I want to do now. I want to give you some tools. I'm going to give you 4 of them. Right? I think I have 3 or 4 in here. And I'd love you to try one. Just one. These are things you can do to start creating that culture of change and innovation. They're easy because if they're not, you won't do them. No one has time for a 12-step program. Right? No one wants it. Your clients don't either, by the way, because you know what? They're humans just like you, and they're tired. So if you can not just create growth, but solve problems and take away things for them that are bothering them, woohoo, loyal for life. So let's try some quick things. Think about which one would you just try with your team or your client quickly. Here's the first one, asking killer questions. We are really great at answers. Most of us are really bad at questions. And I don't mean we're just waiting to talk or we're not active listeners. I mean, we've kind of forgotten how, right? We ask boring questions. If you want better answers, ask better questions. Why will this be important? Here's why it'll be important. Because in the future, asking the right questions, because of technology, is going to be more important than finding the right answers. You can get the answer. There's plenty of data, right? You can find lots of answers. What's the question that you're asking? I mean, when you think about it from a technology standpoint, I think this is really interesting. Google isn't really a search engine. It's an answer engine. Think about it. 10 years ago, when you typed something, it gets smarter and smarter. When you type something into Google, when is George Washington's birthday? And please forgive the American reference for those that aren't from the United States. When is George Washington's birthday? And you would have gotten a list of pages with links that would take you to the site where you could find George Washington's birthday. Now, when you type it in, what happens? You get the Wikipedia dissertation, right, of when it is, plus other things. It thinks, based on searches you've done in the past, you probably want to know, should know, will know. Right? Are you asking the right question to get the right answer? That's your job as a leader, to provoke that thinking. So I want you to think about this. Next time you go into a meeting with your team, with management, or frankly with your client, this is the asking uncomfortable questions or provocative questions. But the goal isn't to make anyone feel stupid ever. That shuts people down. But to really get them thinking and give them permission to do it, you ask cool questions. So think about this. Rather than, well, how could we solve for X? Or who's got a new idea about what business we could, blah, boring. Boring, boring, boring. What if you said this? If we had to give away our current products or services for free immediately, Julie just came into your management meeting and said it's done. We can't charge any more for this stuff. How are you going to make money? What if you did this? This is my favorite one. What question would you love to ask your customers or clients, or frankly your employees, but you're too scared or embarrassed to ask it? Right? By the way, things that get at fear, power, control, emotions, those are always the best questions. Okay? And the last one here. You've just written a tell-all book about the company. What secrets are you going to reveal? Oh, right? That's the one that gives bosses a real heart attack, right? What secrets does it reveal? So here's what I want you to think about. This might just be for yourself on the plane if you're going back. What killer question would you love to ask? Right? Your peers, management, clients. All right, let's do another one. So killer questions, being provocative, that's an easy thing to start to try and do to change the culture of getting comfortable with change. Here's the next one. And I think this is best done by showing, not telling. How many people here, show of hands, are good with math? Ah, okay. That's 3/4. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do some math together, because math is so fun, isn't it? So fun at an offsite. We are going to add numbers together out loud. So I'll say a number first. I'll say, for example, 2, and you'll yell 2. And then I'll add 2 more, and you'll say 4. I'll add 2 more, 6. You get the idea. So we're going to add together out loud. I've done this a few times, so I'll just fade to the background after a while, okay? Is everyone ready to add? Is everyone ready to add? Yes. You guys are very scared. Yes, I think I am. Here we go. Together out loud, let's say the first number, and it is 1,000. Okay, next number, 1,000 and? 40. Great, next? 2,000. Excellent. 2,007. Keep going. 3,007. Good. 3,009. Yes. 4,009. All right, good. Yeah. Do you want to do it again? Want to try it again? All right, this is the top leadership in Navigant. Okay, 5,000. What's really fun is when I do this with like CFOs, and I get the occasional, this is always my favorite, 6,000, right? That's why we're in this mess right now, right? Okay, what happened? What happened? Patterns, right? You make assumptions. This is interesting because this is the best slide I could probably show you that makes you, what makes you really great as a leader can make you really bad as an innovator. You are taught to find shortcuts to be effective, efficient, right? You find patterns to get to the answer. And so we all marched together right off the cliff, right? So there's patterns. There's also something else which is interesting, which is groupthink. And often when I'll find people, this is interesting, especially if you have groups that have introverts versus extroverts, right? We always follow the extrovert because whoever says it loudest is the smartest, right? So how do you actually help the people that started off by saying 5,000, right? So that's a good job as a leader to actually listen to those people, introvert or extrovert, because the person who says it loudest isn't always the one who's right. By the way, who typically gets this right? What type of a person? Anyone know? Not an introvert. Who else? What type of a person? It's children up to age 10 or 11. And this is typically before, the older we get into more, let's find the answer faster. Some of it is driven by standardized testing. I'm a fan of testing, by the way. But we start to see things in more black and white multiple choice. We don't get that gray area of possibility where the real magic and business models that are avant-garde happen. Right? So how do you break your assumptions? I'm going to give you a very simple way to do this, and I'll tell you the magic of it. And I'm going to give you a really dumb example, because if I give you a complex one, you'll go, that'll never work. Right? So here's what happens. I want to talk to you about reversing your assumptions. And here's what you do. The reason so many problems are hard to solve is because we don't break them down into parts. Right? You know how you get more comfortable with something, you can just understand it more and you break it down? Right? Break it down into its assumptions. And assumptions are truths. Right? They're not feelings, they're not emotions, they're not I think, they're truths about how something works. And so we worked with HBO, which, by the way, is so much fun. There aren't a lot of rules there. I mean, let's think about it. They have Game of Thrones. Anything goes, guys, anything. So I was working with the EVP there, and I said, she goes, we're really just stuck in our ways, and we can't seem to come up with new models and subscribe, we've got to do some stuff. And they've got a lot of people nipping at their heels, right? They've got Netflix, they've got a lot of stuff going on. And she said, I really want to get people out of their rut, because sometimes, just like with that added up, you don't know the difference between being in a groove and being in a rut, because they feel the same. So how do you reverse assumptions? So I said, give me a problem you're having that's very simple, and then we can learn the technique and take it on something that's more complex. And she said, all right, let me tell you something that's really stupid that we can break down into parts and we can make it better. It happens to us every day. And she said, we're just going to look at our weekly status meetings. I hate them. I put them in place. They're not effective, and they suck up our time, but I'm really nervous to kill them. Right? That's the real thing with changes. I don't know. I'm more comfortable with what's bad than what could be good. And so I said, well, let's break it down into parts. And what you tell people to do is, I want you to give me 20 assumptions you have about a problem, 20 things that you assume have to be. And by the way, that's hard. When you try to take a problem and break it down into 20 different parts, you will hate me, because it is very difficult to do. You have to force yourself to do it. So they broke it down into parts, and they said, here are the assumptions, some of them we have, right, just for illustrative purposes. They're an hour a week, right? They're managers only, and they're in a conference room. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's reverse those assumptions. And reverse is not the opposite, it's the alternative. Right? It's not meetings, conference room, not conference room. It's more than that. It's like this. Well, maybe it's 39 minutes, no set time. Maybe it's monthly. I don't know. Right? Stupid, but you'll get the point. Okay, maybe we can invite a +1 every week. Whoever is part of the court, we can invite a +1. Or you can invite anyone. It's open now. Maybe it's not in the conference room. It's a secret location. Very secret. It's off-site each quarter. And so they looked at all these things, and with all the assumptions, the ones that they picked were this. They're 39 minutes, because they wanted to catch people off guard and stop talking. They said, everyone can invite a +1, and you don't have to get it approved ahead of time. So imagine the shock when one person brought their friend from Netflix to their meeting. Walked right in. She said she had a heart attack, but she couldn't say no, right? So she said, great. And by the way, then they were invited to Netflix for a meeting, which was really cool. And then they picked secret location. And I frankly was like, that's stupid. Why would they do that? And she said, no, you don't understand. Nobody reads the agendas ahead of time, and now they will, because otherwise they won't know where the meeting is. So I thought that was good. That was smart leadership, actually. Okay, so yeah, Lisa, we solve real problems. Nice tool. That's really light. You can't be serious. No, I can be, because then they actually took this and they went to their client, Verizon, and they said, listen, we want to do this with you because we have a lot of things where we're just stuck. Let's pick a problem together. Let's break it down into parts. And they were talking about some distribution issues. And let's tackle this and reverse it. And they came up with 13 new ideas. And they got a lot more work out of them. So think about that. What can you do? What assumptions do you have within your business or at your clients that are holding them back? And how could you reverse them? You got something that you're just stuck in a rut with? Break it down into parts. And it will be hard. Bonus points if you give your assumptions away to somebody else and have them reverse them. Because you know why? It's hard to solve your own problem. And even more bonus points if you tell them to give you reversals that would get you fired. That's where the good stuff happens. Okay, I only have a couple more. And I'm going to tell you a quick story. Because I have a feeling this next one just might be your favorite. Some of you might have heard this anecdote, but I love it because it was told to me from a client. And this was outside of Wiesbaden in Germany. And this was an engineer. And he said, let me tell you why it's hard for us to get things done. I'm just going to describe, using a story here, what it's like to work at this. It was a nuclear power pump company we're doing an offsite for. He said, there was a scientist who had 10 monkeys in a cage. And he decided he was going to do a little experiment. One day, he put a banana on top of the cage. And of course, what did all the monkeys do? Fought to get the banana. One of them got the banana, and that monkey stayed on top of the cage, ate the banana. And the scientist then poured water on the 9 other monkeys in the cage, and they were really mad. Next day, same thing. He puts a banana on top of the cage. Of course, all the monkeys fight. One of them gets it, eats it, so happy. 9 other monkeys doused with water, screeching mad. By the end of the week, when that scientist puts a banana on top of the cage, all the monkeys know, pull anyone that goes for it down. No one is getting the banana today. So he realizes, these monkeys are smart. He decides that next week he's going to take one monkey out of the cage and put a new monkey in. And he's going to keep doing this for the next 10 weeks. So on Monday, takes an old monkey out and he puts a new monkey in. What does the new monkey do? Goes for the banana. All the monkeys pull him down. And by the end of the week, that monkey knows, do not go for the banana. And at the end of 10 weeks, there are 10 new monkeys in the cage. No one goes for the banana. Nobody knows why. I don't think I have to tell you the corollary here, right? So what's interesting about this is, why do we follow certain rules? Yes, because there's regulatory compliance, you could go to jail. Yes, there are those things. But some of the things that we have internally, you hear phrases like this, that's the way we've always done it. Someone must have put that in place for a good reason. That's the internal dialogue that you're having. And I will tell you that often that's not the case. So one of the best things you can do as a leader, if you want to set the signal for change, this is also very powerful to do with clients. This is the #1 session we have clients ask us to come in and facilitate for them. And this is something they can do on their own. But it's often easier to have somebody from the outside be the facilitator, right? So the idea is this. I would say get your group in a room, right? Your group. And you have to talk about the rules that you can control. Again, because killing rules, it can become a bitch session pretty quickly. That's not the idea. This is about solutions. Say to people, and they will love you for it. If you could kill any 2 rules that are holding you back from changing business models, being more efficient, simplifying, what would they be and why? And you give them 15 minutes, and you know what's going to happen? They're going to ask for more time. I do this with my team, and I'll tell you it's hard. I will tell you if you're a leader, it's hard, because you know what rules they're going to say? The stupid ones you put in place, right? And so calm down, because you have to think about, why are people telling you these rules aren't working? And really listen. And I'll tell you, I had a really good session. I was doing this with Ken Frazier, who's the CEO of Merck. And he's a lawyer. And so here he's giving people permission, his top team, he's giving people permission to kill rules. And all this team kills these rules, and they come up to a board, and they figure out which ones are the quick wins and which ones are harder to kill. And by the way, there are some rules. There are red rules and green rules. Red rules are things, guys, that they're industry mandated, they're government regulated. You'll go to jail if you kill those rules. Let's not touch those rules, okay? Just take that off the table, because people love to tell you why this won't work. Let's focus on the stuff, everything else. It's a green rule, right? And what he realized when he had his top group there is they came up with things that were rules, for sure. By the way, if you work in HR, IT, or legal, you are a huge target in these types of exercises. There's travel policy, there's expense policy, there's HR rules, there's hiring rules. But what was really interesting about it was all the things that people came up with that weren't rules, they were assumptions. Who said you couldn't hire somebody back that had worked here before? There's no nepotism clause. What are you talking about? Who said this is a report? I didn't say this report had to be done. Who told you this report had to be done? So lots of good communication. And what was more interesting was how they could actually get rid of things on a trial basis. They had these monthly operating reports. And he said, who doesn't like these monthly operating reports? And everyone raised their hand and, woo, hate the monthly operating report. One person even said, I have put my monthly operating report in a drawer for the past 3 months, and I'm still waiting for somebody to ask me for it, which I thought was pretty clever. And he said, you know what? I'm going to kill the monthly operating report, but we're going to only kill it for 3 months. And if nobody misses this one report, they had plenty of others, it'll be gone forever. It was killed after 3 months. Right? So by the way, you can't kill a stupid rule and not kill anything. That would be very bad form. But I'd like you to think about, if you could do this in your group or with your client, what would they come up with? And then here's the last thing I'm going to leave you with, and I know we want to get to some Q&A. But I think we're at this point right now where we really need to do a job of making simplification our operating principle. And I know this is actually the topic of my next book, which is called Why Simple Wins, and it's in October. It's the most complex thing I've ever had to write. There's a lot of research on complexity. There's very little on simplicity, right? Because we know we live complexity, but defining simplicity, I don't know. I know it when I see it. So stay tuned on that. But here's what I want you to think about as leaders. People are looking at you to solve problems, but you know what they're really looking for you to do is to break down barriers, right? How can you make simplicity an operating principle, right? It's a free skill that we all have. Why don't we use it more, and why don't we train on it, and why don't we mandate it from our teams? Why are we so stuck in value equals more versus productive is less, right? We need to create that space for change because people don't want to take on more. That's why you get resistance. So I want you to think about as a leader, operating with simplicity, right? How do you get to meaningful work? And the reason why simplicity is so important is people pay more money for simple solutions. There's a 6 to 10% price premium we know from research the clients will pay if you're a simpler organization to work with. Your employees will stay longer because they're happier, and you as leaders will respect each other because you show that you respect each other's time, right? The other thing about this is simplicity is not an efficiency effort. Simplicity is a cultural effort, right? If you get the work right, you get the culture right. Culture is the work you do every day. And if you do meetings and emails every day, that is your culture. How are you spending your time, right? So if you can help simplify, kill a stupid rule, kill the company, and get to work that matters, that's how you will win and beat out the other consulting companies. So let me stop with this. I have given you a few tools that you can use around change. You can reverse assumptions, you can kill rules, you can kill your company, you can ask provocative questions. Some are easier to do than others, so you see where your risk tolerance is. Maybe you want to reverse assumptions and go for it. But I know that change is hard, and I'll just leave you with this one thought, and this is my personal story. And this is what really struck me about change, is that, here I am talking about it, and I know how hard it is to do. And this was a few years ago, several years ago now, when I was switching from a BlackBerry, which I was perfectly happy with, to an iPhone. My husband, he owns a technology company. He's Mr. Early Adopter. It's extremely annoying, trust me. And he has all this technology, and I just, I'm comfortable with my stuff. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. You don't have to change. It was all my excuses. And I was saying, for weeks, I've got to go get an iPhone. I got to go get an iPhone. And he would ask me every few days, did you get your phone? No, I've been traveling. Then there was the other, I'm so busy, right? I'm very busy. All the things you could think about. And after a while, you could tell I was that person that he was tired of hearing about it. Did you get your phone today? No, I had all this crap. I had meetings. And finally, he did the meanest thing ever. He looked at me one day and he goes, let me understand. You go into Grand Central in New York almost every day. There is a massive Apple store right in the rotunda. You pass it twice a day. And he goes, honestly, here's what I want to ask you. What is stopping you? I have never been more mad at my husband in my life, right? How dare he call me out like that, right? Because what I was mad about was I was not mad at him, I was mad at me. Like, what was stopping me? I don't know. You bet your ass I bought an iPhone that night. I went into Grand Central because I was going to show him, right? But it was someone actually saying to me, what is stopping you? Because I was making everyone else the excuse. And really, I know a lot of times there are other people that hold you back. Come on, let's not be ridiculous. But a lot of times, here's what you have to think about. Change is a choice, right? I was fearful of what that change would be. And so finally someone forced me. I just did it now. I was like, wow, now I'm telling everybody else, you should get an iPhone, right? It's just so great. But it took me a while to get off the dime. So what I want you to think about is what's stopping you? Change is a choice. And the same thing with your clients. Do you want to be the one that's incenting the change you want for the future? Or do you want to be the one that's taking orders, right? The future is not about who you are, it's who you're becoming. And I hope that the tools here today will help you achieve that with yourselves and with your clients. So with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. Thank you. Now, I promised that I would take some questions. And I will leave you with this. If you do want the diagnostic, in fact, I'm looking at Renee, maybe she'll tell you someone else later, ask her for it. And maybe that's a way to start change with your teams. Or you're welcome to email me and we can give you some other, like the kill a stupid rule or whatever to get that stuff moving. Our goal is we want you to help you do this with your clients so you can be successful. That's the goal. So let me take a couple questions here. They're displaying right here. Yep, I got it. Okay. Let's see. Can I elaborate on how compensation practices inhibit or inspire innovation? Okay, so let's talk about money. Compensation practices. Well, I'm motivated by money. I'm very motivated by money, right? Because to me it's about worth, right? It's my value. So do I think they inspire people? Yeah, to a point. Now there's going to be experts in this room that are going to think I'm totally full of you-know-what, but here's my reaction after doing this research, especially on simplicity, is that I think compensation inspires to a point, but there's a difference between how much money I'm paid and doing meaningful work. And meaningful work isn't just being about paid well. So there's a point where, yes, people of course want to be paid well and they want to know that they're not being paid unequally to others, but meaningful work really drives people more than you think in terms of compensation. Like I always like to say to people, a lot of what we do with compensation and with culture are really aesthetics. Culture more than compensation, of course, because that's more tangible. But with culture, for example, there's whiteboards and there's painted walls and there's free food, and that's cool. I love that. But after a while, people don't necessarily stay for that if what they're doing all day isn't meaningful. So I think that there's a balance. I think the compensation matters, but I think the meaningful work is more and more important to people, especially with younger generations. I don't know if there's a roaming mic, but I'll take a couple more questions on here unless there's others that want to raise their hand, okay? Let's see. What do change-ready companies, the ones you've worked with, look for in consulting firms they work with? That's really interesting. Change-ready. Who's the person that submitted this, by the way, if they don't mind? What do change-ready companies? Anyone want to say? Change-ready companies? Because I just want to make sure I'm defining change-ready, because that's a big, broad spectrum, right? How do they define it? I think one is people coming to them with comparables so they can feel safe in terms of their risk. Because people say, if they say they're change-ready, what I want to know is how much change-ready. Because most people want to have comparables not just within their industries, but adjacent to it. Other people did something similar to like this, and this is the reaction, so they can get a level of comfort. And I think that they also look for people that are, the obvious things, easy to work with, big forward thinkers, that can stretch them in something that's not just far-term, but also just near-term to get them comfortable. I found with change, actually, the way to get people started is with the quick wins first, but you always have that big picture on the horizon so they know that you're the big thinker to go to. And since I don't know the person that asked that, that's really all the specifics that I can give. Okay, please, back here before I take another question.
I'm not really sure how to phrase it, but what's the lineage in futurist philosophy? Because I go back to, say, Andy Grove's 1996 book on inflection points. Some of the ideas that you're talking about today are similar, but they're different. So how has your industry changed in the way you address how our industries address change?
So I'll answer it from my colleagues would all answer this differently because everyone has a different opinion about it. So I'm more practical. And what I mean by that is I think that how has it changed? I think that the science around it is relatively similar. It's, change happens faster than you think, but it's one of those things where change is always happening. It's just when did you finally recognize it? You know what I mean? And it's harder to recognize things the more complex things get. So this is what I'm talking about with technology, with globality, with scale, with rushing to market on needing to meet quarterly earnings. That makes looking at a long-term future a lot different. So in an academic sense, I think it's similar, but in a practical sense, where I've come to is that I think if you're going to get people to change, right, they have more and more stuff put on them, we have to give them simple ways to do it, not 12-step programs, things that they can do in their everyday work to start to get comfortable with it. And they have to be things around quick wins. Because a lot of times people say, I want to innovate, I want to change, but my boss isn't letting me, right? It's not them as the barrier, it's moving up. And they have to even phrase things differently. They have to involve people in the quick wins so it was their idea. They have to phrase it not as an innovation effort, but as an efficiency effort to get that risk tolerance to be a little bit more comfortable. So that my long story long is, I don't think the science has changed, but I think the positioning and getting people more comfortable to move forward has to be a little bit more short-term thinking. Anyone else? Please.
If in your diagnostic, if people are saying 3 average for the organizations, but at 5 or 6, whatever you said for themselves, does that not mean that they're essentially
a lack of true perception of themselves? And if that's the case, what is the likelihood that they're going to be able to effectuate any real change in their organization?
So, I mean, it's going to depend on the person. And what I've found, though, is that the intent for people, if they give themselves higher versus the organization, I'm going to answer this two ways, is usually people are pretty honest. That's my feeling on it. Like, they have the intent, I'm willing to do it, but I'm not going to tell you what holds me back. But if you ask them what really holds them back, it's usually some kind of complexity. There are two different kinds of complexity. There's organizational and there's individual. And the stuff that really gets people down the most is individual. So it's not, yeah, I get these policies and I get the regulatory stuff, but a lot of the things that then were put in place to manage those things are individual. Meetings, reports, policies, procedures, nicer clip out on my PowerPoint. And so those are the types of things that come up when you see the gap. There are some people that are completely delusional, that are the biggest roadblocks to change, that gives themselves an 11 on it, but most of the people in the room know who those people are. Yeah, that's really what I can say about that. Anyone else? Please.
One of the themes I've picked up is the increasing speed and the pace of change in the marketplace. And I think you had a slide up there this morning that talked about the number of reviews and number of collaborators that has increased 50 to 350%. I read recently where that decision-making is taking longer in organizations because of those types of factors. So given the speed of change and the decrease in decision-making, what's the solution to that?
Well, I mean, to me, this gets down to having a strong leadership around how can we take out some of those layers. I mean, I don't know how else to tell you, but some people will say that we can't do that. I mean, I would say, is there a way that we can decrease the number of people that have to approve something? Is there a way that we cannot have handcuffs, but I like to say guardrails in terms of, well, they still want to have control over something, but rather than having to rubber stamp everything, can you give them a range that they can operate in? I mean, even as something as stupid as, we do work with IBM, as expenses, right? Rather than having to approve every single expense, then can we just do a range of things that we can give permission? A lot of this stuff really comes down to, with decision making, it's trust. That's what it is, period. Right? I don't trust you, so I'm afraid to take the risk. And then we create blanket policies because there's always that one bad apple that affects everybody else, right? So the more that we can start to let go of those range and we can eliminate the number of decisions, we can give ranges to do it, or we can eliminate the number of levels, that's how I would change it. Yeah. Anybody else? In the back, please. Yeah.
I don't know if I need to.
No, you got a good, come up here. Good voice.
One thing that we talk about for time bodies is helping them with technology evolution. This concept of future proofing that we talked about. But after hearing the concept of change being constant, is that total BS?
Let me make sure I understand. So by giving them being future proof, is that total BS? Yeah, I don't think anyone can be future proof, if that's what you mean, yeah. I think it's a really cool phrase and it would really be a great keynote platform because you get a lot of work, but and it'd be a great, it's a great book and it's a great phrase, and that's true. I mean, your job is you want to future-proof them so they can be able to adapt and adjust as long as possible, of course. But to be, I mean, that's like saying you're going to get to the point where no change will ever happen, and so therefore we're all set for the rest of our lives. I don't think it's never say never, but I do not follow that philosophy. Yeah.